Everybody. So thank you so much for joining us today for this session, which we're calling Coffee with the Board Members, but I'm not sure that too many of us have coffee at this point in time. So hopefully everyone has something good to drink as we sit here and talk through this, how to become a board member and applying to the board here over just after lunchtime for a lot of us. So I'm going to go ahead and have everyone who's here on the call joining us introduce themselves, and I'll go ahead and start. So my name is Julie Nash. I'm the immediate past president for ISMTE, and I am going to be the chair of the nominations committee. The chair position always falls to the immediate past president, so this is my first year doing that. So we'll go around. Megan, do you want to go next?
Thanks, Julie. I'm Megan McDevitt. I'm the managing editor of the Journal of Pediatrics, and I'm president-elect of ISMTE.
Great. Thanks, Megan. And how about Michelle?
Hey, everybody. I'm Michelle English. I'm the vice president of ISMTE, and I'm the executive editor at ASCE, the American Society of Civil Engineers. For ASCE, I oversee the workshop committee and the marketing and social media.
Great, thanks, Michelle. Stephanie, do you want to go next?
I'm Stephanie Kinnan. I am the managing editor of clinical publications at the American Society for Gastrointestinal Endoscopy. And for ISMTE, I am the co-editor-in-chief in EON, and I'm serving in the board of directors role for EON.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. And George, would you like to go?
Sure. I'm George Woodward. I am an executive publisher at Oxford University Press. And for ISMTE, I am a board member and the board liaison for the sponsorship committee.
Great, thanks, George. Do we have any other board members on here that I can't see? Okay, great. I didn't think so. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anybody. So yeah, today we are going to walk through a couple of informational slides to talk about how to apply to the board and sort of the process. And then we'll have each of the board members here on the call talk a little bit about their backgrounds, how they got involved, and things that they're doing with the ISMTE board. And then we'll open it up to questions. So hopefully we can answer any questions that anyone may have on any of the open positions or the commitment that it takes to be a part of the ISMTE board. So first of all, starting with our open positions. So we have 3 at the moment. So there's one officer position, which is a 2-year term of treasurer. We have one open director position that is a 3-year term. And then we have the EON editor position, which is actually a 4-year commitment. And just to talk a little bit about how that's a little different. So with the EON editor, the first 2 years are a committee / sort of deputy editor position, sort of learning how EON works. And it is not a board facing position at that point. And then after the first 2 years, that changes. The EON editor rotates off, and the deputy committee chair moves into the EON editor position. And we felt when we developed the position this way that it allowed for good training, as it is a very involved position, but also will allow more people to be involved and help out with EON behind the scenes. So, next slide. Okay, so just to go through a little bit about the timetable that we have. So today we are doing this coffee, so hopefully to answer any questions that anyone may have. All applications are due by October 1st. So hopefully we will not have to make any changes to that, but we do, as part of our bylaws, like to try and stick to that deadline. So if there are any questions about that or concerns, do let us know. But at this point in time, that is our pretty firm deadline. And then following that, the nominations committee will meet. And we've actually already set our meeting for just the week after that, that deadline. And so the nominations committee will review the nominations in advance of that meeting and then discuss the applications and then select a slate to send to the board of directors. So that gets sent to the board of directors. the board of directors has the opportunity to, ask any questions and essentially give an approval or a decline of that slate. Assuming it's approved, it goes out to the board, or it goes out to members to be voted on as the new board members. And that is a vote up or down of the slate. It's not an individual vote per person. So it's a membership vote on the slate. And then once that is completed in November, we will announce the new board members in December, and those terms all start in January of 2021. So what is expected of a board member? So a lot of our board members that are here on the call today will be able to answer, specifically of those questions and sort of their impressions and realities. So hopefully we can have some Q&A on that. But overall, the responsibility of an ISMT board member is to be an ambassador for the society, to answer questions or, promote the society within the organizations that you work for. To be familiar with the board governance documents. So we have a lot of materials sort of behind the scenes that are all held on a shared site that all board members can access. So being involved in sort of that governance process and familiar with that governance process is part of the responsibility. We have monthly board calls. So it is the responsibility of the board members to participate and to attend those. Attendance in the annual face-to-face board meeting, which was a Zoom face-to-face this year. So normally we would do the face-to-face board meeting as part of our North American meeting, but this year, obviously being virtual and just the climate and changes that we're in, we did a virtual board meeting as well. So that was, we just had earlier this month. And then full disclosure of perceived conflicts of interest. So it's the responsibility of the board members to disclose conflicts. We have an ethics committee that reviews conflicts of interest in forms that we ask board members and committee members to complete. And then just to make sure that there's nothing that they perceive as being problematic. But being upfront, disclosing any conflicts is part of being a board member. So what can board members expect? So correspondence relating to board business. There's a lot of email correspondence, discussions between board members. A lot of our board members serve as liaisons to committees. So, and that's number 2 on this list. And there's a lot of correspondence too that goes along with being part of a committee and having some committee oversight. A liaison, and by liaison to committees, the liaisons act as a link between the committee operations and the board. And so if there are questions via the committee about, what a board process is or what the next steps are to implement a change in the committee or a new effort that the committee wants to do, the board liaison will be able to help bridge that, and will also be able to present any items for discussion to the board. So then we usually expect about 1 to 3 hours per month of committee focus area business. It's usually about what it takes. Some months might be a little bit more, some months might be less. Some are definitely committee dependent. So if you're working on the North America meeting, that's going to be way more leading up to and just after and during the meeting. And then usually 1 to 5 hours a month of board business. And some of that is the monthly meetings that we discussed. There's also a lot of materials that go with the board packets, so reading through that, being prepared. And then often there are email discussions that happen with things in between meetings. And then, some of the rewarding things, as part of the expectations, there are a lot of opportunities to build leadership, to get network within the industry and build peer relationships as well. So how to apply. So we have two links here. The first one is the link to the board applications, and that's the treasurer and the board director position. So that is available on the first link there. The second link includes the application, which is a little bit different for the EON editor. So those are the two places to go for those items. You know, things to highlight in your application. You might want to highlight any past involvement you've had within the society, what strengths or experience you can bring to this particular position. So I think for the EON editor position, if you have any sort of newsletter experience, it would definitely be something to highlight in there. And a vision for the society. What do you hope to bring to help shape or change the society would be helpful to include. And then lastly, anything that you would like to achieve or advance within the society while you were on the board. Those are all sort of useful items to include as you're considering things to write about in your application. All right, so best wishes to everybody here who might apply. So I would like to now go to our board members on the call and just have you all kind of talk a little bit about your experiences. And maybe we can do the same order that we did earlier. Maybe start with Megan and talk a little bit about your experiences on the board and how you got involved, things maybe you expected, things that were surprises, and maybe any advice you might have for people applying.
Thanks, Julie. And great summary of the whole application process. It's nice to have it all broken down. So I got involved first. Deborah Bowman was the editor of EON, and so I first got involved kind of helping her out, solicit articles, and I think doing some column work and just kind of helping in general proofing and learning the process from her. And then I became the EON editor after her. And so that came with the position on the board. So that's how I first kind of ended up on the board. And then from there, served as treasurer, and then am now serving president-elect, which is a somewhat long process, but president-elect and then president, and then 2 final years as past president. So that's kind of my timeline. I've just greatly appreciated all of the leadership opportunities. I mean, things I've experienced that I just would never have gotten to do, you know, in a normal day-to-day job. You're just getting these experiences that are unusual and wouldn't really come up. Several years ago, I was involved with the branding committee when we redid our logo for the 10th anniversary, and I'd never been involved in anything like that, like marketing, branding, graphic design. So that was really, really interesting. Obviously, some experience with budgeting and society governance, being with treasurer and then as president-elect. So that's been really interesting too. And overall, just that great interaction with the other people on the board, and just kind of moving the mission forward of the society and having a real say in that has been really, really fruitful for me. And I do find the work just very invigorating, and just it's definitely been a great experience. And I think there's lots of opportunities and to be as involved, or there's a certain level of minimum commitment, you know, the monthly board calls and serving as a board liaison, but you can, from there, you know, if there's other committees you still want to be a member of, or, you know, you want to be part of the awards committee, or you want to serve on the nominations committee, there's lots of opportunities there to do all sorts of other things or try out different areas. And I think there's just a lot of great support. Our management company, First Point, Donna and Janine, they're spectacular. So you don't feel alone. You definitely have support from them as well as the other board members. I think that's pretty much all I have off the top of my head. Julie, is there anything else specific?
Nope, that sounds great, Megan. Thank you. So why don't we go to Michelle?
Okay, so I became involved with ISMT, I think around 2011 or so, first sort of going to local group meetings, going to the annual North American conference, that sort of thing. And I began volunteering with ISMTE when I started to act as a volunteer on the North American Planning Committee. That was a really great experience for me because I was able to see how a conference is planned for the first time. Eventually, down the line, I became chair of that committee and helped to plan 2 really successful years in a row. It's been very rewarding for me to get to interact with all of the different members of ISMTE, as well as working to try to bring more people into the fold. I think conference planning especially, and now as I'm the board liaison to the workshop committee, it's been really cool to get to invite people that we want to hear what their experiences are to come and speak at ISMTE. I also think that one of the things that I enjoy most about volunteering for ISMTE, whether it's on a committee or on the board, really is just getting to hear from other members about what's going on with their journals and their societies, and really getting to sort of collaborate and share those experiences and then try to build something out of that, whether it's more educational opportunities, maybe it's a conference session or a workshop or a resource or standard on the ISMTE website. I think that's really great, like getting to participate in the creation of those things. I would say that ISMTE is so strongly built on relationship building with the membership. I have always found everyone to be very open-minded and concerned for the overall integrity of our profession as managing editors or people that work in a publishing office in general. So that's what's been very rewarding. Another aspect that I've really enjoyed is, and this is similar to what Megan was saying, getting to participate in some of the governance things involving ISMTE. We are in the middle of a 3-year strategic plan right now, about to launch into the 2nd year of it. And I think it's really special to get to help shape some of the goals for the society moving forward, as well as work to move those goals forward.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. Stephanie.
So I started working with ISMTE several years ago, following in actually Megan's footsteps, along with Deborah Bowman. Megan and I used to work together, and I still work with Deborah. And they really encouraged me to get involved with EON first and foremost, and I did, and eventually became the editor. And I'm wrapping up my 4 years with EON at the end of this year. And it's, as Julie mentioned, it's a nice dynamic because you get to do this work as the EON editor, but now I'm also immersed in all this board stuff, and it's been just a really nice add-on to the position, getting to be involved with, as Michelle mentioned, some of this strategic planning and the direction of the society, and you get to, participate in establishing where we're going in the future. So I've really found that to be rewarding, and I think in addition to kind of that role that you have in shaping the society, you also get to make all these new connections with people. And I met a lot of people through the board, gotten close with a lot of people, and got to hear their ideas and thoughts and what they need out of ISMTE. And it's for a lot of networking opportunities at conferences and events, and you get the opportunity to hear from people there too, like what their expectations are from the society. And as a board member, I get to bring that back and help give them a voice. And I really enjoy being able to be kind of a spokesperson and a representative for all these members of the society, and be their connection to kind of like the upper level of the society that determines the future and where we're going. So that's been a really great opportunity for me. And I think it's, as Megan mentioned, it's really great to also continue other work. And I think, Michelle, you touched on this too, but continue other work on your committees. So I can be on the board and I can participate in all these high level things, but then I can also go back and just do my, you know, proofing articles for EON and talking to people about writing an article and things like that. So then I get really down into the day-to-day stuff of, you know, this aspect of the society. So I love that dynamic, that being on the board gives you time to do high level stuff, but also participate in the day-to-day running of, you know, a part of the society. And I think that regardless of if you choose to apply for the editor position or if you would choose to apply for the director position, as Michelle mentioned, you're still going to be able to serve on those committees and do those, like, you know, hands-on activities with the society.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. And George.
Sure. So I guess splitting it evenly, since we already had some EON representation, my involvement with ISMTE has been, like Michelle's, largely coming up through the conference, the North American Conference Planning Committee, which I was involved with for a couple of years, which I think was very much an eye-opening experience in a lot of ways. And having attended a number of different conferences over the years, I think being on the other side of it and planning it, for one thing, it's given me a very high degree of empathy for conference planners now for every conference I attend. So that's been very helpful. And then in joining the board, I joined after discussions with current President Aaron Landis at the time. And largely it was because of my history with working in an editorial office, but then moving into a different role within a publisher. It was felt that I would bring a little bit of a different perspective. And I think that that's really key to the success of the board. And one of the things that I know we're hoping to see develop further is the broadening of perspectives, the differing perspectives that each of the board members can bring to the board going forward, whether it's in terms of geographical representation, representing different kinds of journals, different working arrangements, certainly different fields, going beyond science and medicine and into the humanities, social sciences, engineering, and further. So I think that really that's going to be key to the success of ISMTE going forward. And I suspect that for most of us, the reason ISMTE really spoke to us in the first place is that sense that we were working in isolation so much, and that we were doing things that, yes, there is this invisible network of professionals out there who are working on these same questions, who are trying to advance things in the same way, but we didn't necessarily have the right routes for communicating with those people. And I think that that has really been core to why ISMTE has been successful so far, and I think is important to maintain as we go forward. So really seeking out those opportunities. It's such a well-sized organization in that it's not so big that you can't get involved, but it's large enough that there are so many opportunities within the organization to get involved. And I think it's really hit that sweet spot for right now. And so that's what I take from being a member of the board, I think, and why I've always enjoyed being a member of ISMTE.
Great, thank you, George. So we're going to go to just a couple questions that we have here today. And I did want to let everyone know too that this is, we're recording this session, so this will be available on our ISMTE website to look at later. So, you know, please feel free to share this with others. So the first question is for Stephanie. Stephanie, if you wouldn't mind just describing a little bit more about the EON responsibilities, both as the committee deputy sort of side of it, and then the editor responsibility. What would be sort of a day in the life be like?
So it really varies a little bit depending on what part of the month it is. Obviously, you know, most of us work in editorial offices. We know how there's that kind of up and down in the process of compiling an issue and getting it ready for publication. So both the committee head editor and the board representative editor, they share equal responsibilities. So, you know, there's not one person who's doing the majority of the work. You're going to share those responsibilities of prepping an issue, getting it ready for publication, soliciting content, all of that stuff. So I would say, you know, we usually compile the next issue at the beginning of each month. So there might be a few extra hours of work just making sure that we have all the articles ready, they're proofed and ready to be sent in. And then again, when that first proof of the issue comes around mid-month, there's a little bit of extra time making sure that that issue is proofed and looks good and is ready to go to publication. So I'd say, you might go for a week with doing nothing but sending an email here and there, and then you might have to put in a few extra hours of commitment. Another big aspect of being the EON editor is making sure that you have good quality content for each issue. So there is some solicitation of articles. I personally like to pay attention when I'm going to conferences or webinars, any kind of events where somebody relevant to our field is speaking, and determine if maybe they might have some good content for an article. So then I will reach out to people after things like that. So there is that solicitation aspect, but the majority of the work is in your basic prepping articles and proofs for publication. Really the main difference in the position is that when after your first 2 years, you, like I said, get into that board position, and then you have some just added responsibility because you do act as a normal board of directors member. So you'll liaise with EON, go back and forth with EON and your other editor to bring stuff to the board and bring things from the board back to EON. And you'll have, as Julie mentioned at the beginning, you'll have those regular board commitments like the monthly phone call, the in-person meeting. So it's just a little bit of additional responsibility that comes for those second 2 years.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. And really, the next question is for any board member. How would you describe the time commitment to the board? What do you find yourself spending the most time on? And what about that was surprising or not surprising when you joined the board?
I can take this one, or start first, I suppose. I have found that it really varies depending on what committee you are the liaison for and the overall kind of activities of that committee. Here, an example for the workshop committee, we were very quiet typically over the fall, basically right after the workshop happens. We typically don't really start up again in earnest until January or February. But then as we were getting closer to the event, we went from having monthly calls to every other week to once a week to, in some instances, a couple times a week when we had to switch this year from an in-person format to trying to take the workshop to virtual. So as a committee liaison, it really depends. So I kind of see it as overall, there's going to be quiet times and there's going to be times of a lot of activity. And I think also as a board member participating in the strategic planning process, many of us are kind of acting as champions of different initiatives within the strategic plan. And depending on the timeline on those, it can be a flurry of activity for a while and then a bit of a pause and then picking back up, just depending on who you're waiting on for what or how that particular goal or initiative interacts with other initiatives. So I found that typically I'm spending several hours a month at minimum on my board responsibilities, but typically in the spring and summer, it's a little bit more.
Great, thank you, Michelle.
And I think this is probably a good time to acknowledge Donna, who you'll see in the lower right, at least of my corner, and the rest of the ISMTE staff who really go out of their way, I think, to make sure that every board member has the resources that they need to deliver success and to really help mitigate the amount of time that you are spending on any given task. Certainly in my committee work, Donna has really stepped in and things that I had just assumed I would be doing, Donna is now doing, which is fantastic and is really helpful, because other than that, I agree entirely with Michelle that it does vary from committee to committee and from season to season. But I think that so many of us are working on similar calendar years in terms of when our peak busy times are. And I think that that helps to some degree to align expectations as well.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to know, that no board members on their own. There is a whole support structure behind the scenes. So even if it's just scheduling calls with committees or other board members, there's a support structure to that. So that's a good point for sure. So one other question then, also to any board member, what have you found to be the most rewarding thing you've worked on so far on the board?
Jump in on this one. I think this is, Michelle talked about this before, but I think the strategic plan is certainly the most important thing that I've been a part of. So our strategic planning happened last year at the in-person meeting during the North American Conference. And that was my first in-person meeting. I had just become started my board term earlier that year. And it was just an incredibly rewarding experience to just get to contribute to all these ideas. And it's not that we were even, coming up with ideas, just on our own. We had done a member survey to poll the membership to see where they wanted the society to go, what things we should be focused on. And then we took all that information and used it to tailor this strategic plan. And I just think that being able to be in the room for that and share my thoughts and opinions and help shape that was an amazing experience. And I'm really looking forward to continuing to be involved with that in any way that I can as we kind of roll through these next few years of this plan.
Great, thanks, Stephanie.
I agree with Stephanie. So I won't repeat anything she said, but I'd echo that. I found my experience on EON to be probably one of the most rewarding things. I really, really enjoyed it. I think by the time, I think I had a 3-ish year term. So by the time that wrapped up, you're kind of ready to pass it along. But I really, really loved that experience. You just got to connect and reach out to so many people, members and non-members in the industry. And every month, you're proud of the work you're putting out and distributing. So I think EON is it's a really cool opportunity for, any ISMT member. And then related to the strategic plan, I'm the champion of the, early career task force. So I'm finding a lot of value in that experience right now, where we're just kind of laying groundwork for, future initiatives and kind of trying to see who our early career members are and what their needs are, and trying to, find ways to meet those needs there. So that's been, it's a great group, and it's really, the early career members are just enthusiastic and really energetic about being involved in the society. So I'm really looking forward into the future, to see what that holds.
Great, thank you, Megan. Anyone
One
else?
interesting thing I would say also is that right now is such a good time to start doing something new, volunteering. Everything's shut down right now. I think we all feel maybe a little isolated. And over the last couple of months, I've just felt so happy that I have my ISMT responsibilities during all of this, because it's been another opportunity to connect with people outside my organization, and just kind of work towards something that feels good, that is contributing to our profession, and that kind of is a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. I know that this year we spent so much time as a board and as individual committees trying to pull off a virtual event for now about to be 3 different geographical conferences for ISMTE. And so I think that right now it's a great time to volunteer. There's a lot of new opportunities, and I think room for a lot of new ideas at the moment because of the way things are right now.
Great.
I'm so glad you said that, Michelle. Yeah, I completely agree. That feeling of happy is that I get off the calls and you just feel invigorated and happy about it, and you feel good about the work you're doing. So no, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo that connection that you're talking about. You know, certainly now especially, but just in general, I work in medical publishing, so my interaction is with people who come from a completely different background than me, and I enjoy the people I work with, but I don't get the same level of connection that I get when I work with ISMTE volunteers, when I'm talking to people on the board. That is a connection that I really would miss in my professional life, you know, if I didn't have my ISMTE responsibilities. So I think for people who feel like they might be a little bit isolated in their positions, or they're surrounded by people who don't understand their experiences and don't have the same experiences, being part of ISMTE, volunteering for committees or on the board, it's just an incredible opportunity to feel like you belong and you're connected with people.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, I completely agree. I think echoing what everyone said, I think we've brought up some really good points and have really captured what it is to be on the board. So I want to thank everybody for participating today, and just want to close it out by reminding everyone that the applications are due on October 1st, and we will have a fairly quick turnaround for decisions on those applications. So please, we encourage everybody to apply. We love to have different viewpoints and different people from around the world. So definitely encourage colleagues and friends to apply and consider getting involved as well. So thank you, everyone. Thanks so much for participating.